So you might know a couple things about me, but here are a bunch of useless information about me. The first thing is I collect die-cast cars. I collect Hot Wheels cars. I sometimes collect those Jada cars, 132 and 124 scales. And it really shows because my whole entire room is flooded with just die-cast cars non-stop. Like, die-cast cars here, there's a whole entire shelf dedicated to it. There's even a few right here, and I have a little fidgety one. It's a Braille twin mill. And then I also have one right here, a shelf almost dedicated to that, and even a windowsill that's dedicated to die-cast cars, and even my bookshelf, which has some die-cast cars on it. So this room is completely flooded with that. Now here's something that you probably may not know unless you follow my Instagram. I am really, really into photography. I've done it since I was around 11, starting with an old Amazon Kindle, all the way up to a smartphone, and even some cameras as well. Now, you might be thinking like, okay, maybe the S21 is my best camera. Nope. You might think that the Nikon B500 is my best camera. Nope. You might even think that a Canon 5D Mark II is my favorite camera. Nope, you would be very surprised. Actually, my favorite is a Polaroid, which hence why at one point, especially when I was taking a vacation, I have tons of pictures just from this thing right here. Now, speaking of Polaroids, if there was a time machine that was invented, the time I would go back to is the 1980s. Because honestly, I feel like that's where all the gimmicks are at. That's where you had actual buttons instead of touch screens and just fake buttons that act like they are buttons, like an iPhone home button. You know, and it just seems the aesthetics are there. You know, especially the cameras from the 80s. I absolutely love those. And my favorite generation of Corvette, I know it might be surprising to some people, is a C4 Corvette. Now, another thing you might have noticed while I was showing you my car collection placement is that I am a gamer, okay? Now, the most used one is my PC. It's not the most favorite, but it's the most used one. I play the snot out of BeamNG Drive on it. And then I also have a Wii U, which is probably the most played console I have of just all time ever since my childhood. I mean, personally, like as of lately, in my adulthood, probably the PC is probably the most used. But my all-time favorite console ever would have to be this right here. The PS3 I found on Amazon, and what makes it so special is that it's backwards compatible with PS2. And actually, I grew up with a PS2 throughout my toddler years. The more you know. And here's something that you may find interesting. Actually, like, probably 90% of my weekends, or at least maybe like 20 or 30% of my days after work, I usually like to pace around in this room talking to myself about whatever topic that you can ever think of. If whatever you're thinking, I've probably talked about it just in here. And I've done that ever since my dad passed away, since I was 13. And it's been very therapeutical, I think it's pronounced. But yeah, I mean, this is just kind of a place where I just hang out and, you know, heck, I even have 2 beanbags there. I actually have I also have a speaker that I just bought a couple months back, and it's been okay. I used it once. And the last factor I was talking about me being a gamer, I have a Nintendo 64 here. Fun fact, I've never played with it in my entire life. I still need to set it up, but it's pretty cool though. Another thing as well is actually I am into RCs. Let me show you. So I had quite a couple RCs. I've had a little RC buggy that my grandma bought on Amazon whenever I was around 11 or 12 years old. I even got this for myself before I went off to vacation last year at the time of this recording. And then I've also had one later in my teenage years whenever I had a Traxxas Bigfoot. But this one's probably the most used out of all of them that I've had. Then I had an X-Max right after, which I wasn't really a big fan of. But, I mean, it was a lot of fun, though. And then, I recently have just bought this guy right here. And honestly, I'm like, if this doesn't tell you how big this is, I don't know what will. Or even just doing this. Like, look how massive this RC is compared to just this one. Like this one you can fit on just one hand. You'll be lucky to be, if you're strong enough, you could probably lift it with one hand, but this makes my hand look small and I have monster hands. And just to let you know that, I'll just put it this way, RCs are not cheap. I mean, even this one that in the RC world is considered cheap, around $300. This is $1,000. Now here's some infamous reputations I've had. Now back in high school, I had a very infamous reputation for using broken phones. And I mean, even throughout my adulthood after I graduated, I still had a reputation for using broken phones, and I'm actually pretty dang used to it. Like, as of what I'm recording on right now, I'm using my iPhone 8 SE. This is my S21 Ultra. And actually, the one thing about my SE is it's not broken. I'm thinking about switching to it, so yeah. And then also, I have another reputation of drinking energy drinks. I have an addiction to them. It isn't as big as it used to be, because I remember when I first started working at the job I work at now, I used to just hog energy drinks. Like, I would just go through 4 Monsters per day. I mean, I know there's people that do a lot worse, but even then I will say is that don't be drinking any more than 2. If you're going to be on the 3rd one, just get a tiny can, like a Red Bull that's an 8 ounce or something. Don't be just killing yourself just drinking energy drinks. It's going to screw you over sooner or later. Don't ask me how I know. And then, I mean, here's a little obscure fact. I'm actually pretty well known for having a very flexible thumb as well. And I also have a couple other flexible joints. Like, let me see if I can show you the one where I can bend my pointer finger back like this. I mean, I have some interesting joints here and there. And also, I had quite a couple nicknames and screen names over time as well. Whenever I was in youth group, I was called the Hawk. I was called Bub by my dad and my mom as well. And then screen names, I started off with James Twinmill when I started Facebook, and it didn't really last for that long because quickly after I went to Jamester, and then I went to Jamester Galaxy, to Mr. Jamester, to now Jamester Stall. Now, I don't know where the nickname Bub came from. I just think that was just a thing that just started whenever I was a little kid. But I know that when I was called the Hawk, I mean, I was just like, hey, I'm considered the Hawk as well back in youth group. And then I was well known for being called that, and also in school as well. And then, I mean, that lasted for quite a while, but then that kind of slowly died off over time. And then when I started using the internet around 2016, 2017, I had a screen name named James Twinmill, and I kept that for about just under a year to maybe a little bit over. But then that quickly went to Jamester, which actually how I got the name was actually very interesting. Okay, so the motive was from, the movie Cars, whenever Lightning McQueen has this, whenever he is this red car with the Rusty's sponsor on him. Well, actually at the end of Cars 3, he paid tribute to his mentor Doc Hudson, which he was known as Fabulous Hudson Hornet. He was a blue Hudson Hornet that's based off a real car that literally had Fabulous Hudson Hornet. Lightning McQueen at the end of Cars 3, he had blue paint, just like his mentor Doc had in Cars. And he was actually called the Fabulous Lightning McQueen. So, I kind of treated that the same way, I want to pay tribute to my dad because he was an awesome dad looking back. And he was called the Brenster by his dad, my pap. He was called Brenster. And then whenever I saw that scene of Cars 3, it really just hit in my head. And I'm like, I want to call myself Jamester. So that's how that came to be. Jamester Galaxy, that was from an obscure YouTube channel called Nightcore Galaxy. And then quickly after, whenever it was called Mr. Jamester, that was actually literally a knockoff of Mr. Beast. And then Jamester Stall was just kind of an original. Now here's a fun fact. I had 5 cars. Okay, I had a 2012 Chevy Silverado, which, another fun fact, I never driven because I never couldn't get the point of manual. It was something that my dad owned, and it was supposed to be handed down to me, but because I just could never get manual, so that was out of the books. And then I got a Ford Taurus, and then right after I graduated, I got a Dodge minivan, and then the truck that I never got the point of manual on, well, traded in for a 2018 Toyota RAV4. And then earlier this year, at the time of this recording, I hit a deer, and then I just bought a Subaru 2.5 RS because, well, it was just a thing to get me from point A to point B because I really had no car. Now, here's something that you might find interesting about me. I have never dated my entire life. But however, there was one girl back in middle school that used to flirt with me, and then also I used to have a crush on a girl last year, but that never went through. But I never dated ever, and actually probably never will. Now, another thing as well about me is that I lived in three different states. I lived in Pennsylvania, Alaska, and I lived in California as well. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please smash a like. And if you want to keep up to date, please subscribe as well. And I'll see you on the next one. So see you later. Bye-bye.